Live.
All right, welcome back to the Chabinet meeting here. It is March 6th as we are finally getting back together to try to make ourselves another little video dash recording here. It's been a little while. There's been, again, always a lot going on, but it's been interestingly quiet. About 1 hour ago, the Senate passed an updated version of the $1.9 trillion Biden stimulus bill or porculus bill.
Yeah,
I mean,
spendulous, porculous. We're going to talk about what a stimulus is in a minute. But
right.
go
So
ahead.
it's pretty ugly, but we're definitely going to get into it. I'm the department chair,
I am the cabinet.
and today we are without the gavel, but she will be back in short order. We're just gonna see. We're gonna do a short little article today because it is very pointed as to what's going on. Um, it's interesting. I don't want to say that COVID is on the decline, but it seems to definitely be on the decline. What was it, 2 or 3 days ago? Mississippi and Texas have completely reopened, or excuse me, I'm a liar. They announced the reopening, and they are officially reopening within 4 days. 4 days, they are reopening completely as if COVID never existed. So, I mean, what are your feelings of what's going on here, Chad? What do you think?
Past due time for reopening from COVID. The whole point of any kind of lockdown was to not overwhelm the hospitals. There was
Mm-hmm.
never any anticipation that you could prevent people from dying. And
Right.
that now we have the vaccines, so now people who were waiting for that are out of things to wait for, I guess, and we can. I don't know. I don't want to get into COVID.
Well, I mean, we
Can of
kind of
worms.
have to, considering the trillions of dollars that are about to be smashed into our faces, within probably.
All right, so it's like you can't solve these things by throwing money at them. But it appears to be all the government knows how to do. It's all both parties seem to be able to agree on is to print money.
I mean, so we're just out of ideas at this point that are effective. Let's just throw money at the problem.
Well, they don't care whether it's effective or not, right? Nobody ever goes back and checks. Did throwing at the money at the problem actually solve anything? They don't care. They're always talking about what they're going to throw more money at next time. There's no
Right,
memory.
right.
Um,
You're right. There's no memory at all.
the word stimulus is obscene to me. What is so? Why were people sent checks last spring, Chair?
Well, because COVID was hideous and horrible, and people couldn't pay for their rent, their food. They
Okay, but
lost their
why couldn't they pay for their rent?
they lost their
Why had
jobs
they lost their jobs?
because the state demanded that their businesses closed.
Okay, so the state destroyed something,
Mm-hmm.
and then the state paid out compensation for the destroyed property.
And
It's like the
well,
takings clause, like when they put a freeway through your yard and they have to pay for it.
yeah, I would only say
Okay.
it's compensation if it's actually fair compensation, and I seriously
Oh, there's
doubt
no
that
way
it
to measure that.
is. Oh,
Are we gonna? I mean, then you could get into reparations discussions. But in any
oh,
case,
right, right.
um,
I don't want to even. I
people
mean,
were
not that
paid
I'm.
$20,000 for being placed in Japanese internment camps in World War II. Was that too much or too little?
Yeah,
And why?
right.
Okay.
All right. I certainly see your point. Yeah, I see your. Wow, we really do need the gavel. I see your point, but it is just my thinking out loud to find what is equal
Okay. Okay.
compensation.
But let's pretend you could somehow
Calculate
achieve
that.
that,
Okay.
or let's pretend that that was the purpose of this, because that was the stated purpose.
I'm laughing. Excuse me. The stated purpose. You
Yeah.
mean it wasn't meant to destroy the economy and then point the finger at Donald Trump? Right. Right.
Okay.
Right.
But under the guise of stimulus, right?
Yes.
So what they pretend that they're doing is what? Injecting money into a weak economy that if it just had a little more liquidity, it would be able to get up and go?
No. I think
Okay.
the first stimulus.
So the word stimulus in every case is a horrendous misnomer because what that word is intended to make you feel is that this is somehow going to pick up the economy and get it going.
Now, to
It ought to be called COVID
yeah, what would you call it then?
COVID handouts, COVID reparations, COVID compensations, the COVID
There's
compensation bill.
uh,
Oh, those things don't sound upbeat enough, do they?
no, they don't. No, they don't. And
Okay, so
they're
let's pretend we're fixing the economy by destroying it.
yeah. Here is a pile of here's a pile of dog crap in a nice, beautiful box with all sorts of wrapping paper. I mean, that's kind of what that is.
All right.
But I mean, it doesn't matter what it's called. It had two goals in mind, and it was A, we're going to throw money at the people, more than likely to make them look like we care and for their votes. And in the process, we will also blame the Trump administration because they broke the economy. Meanwhile, the governors actually had control of what states were open or closed. Yet no one understands that in this country. We're just going to look up at the president. People have forgotten how our government works.
Right. So I'm going to go ahead and share this screen with you.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can now see the article.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and speaking of, there he is. Where actually, yeah, there he is. Where has he been? Now, obviously, it's been about a week and a half, 2 weeks here since we've had our previous meeting, but he has been very, very quiet and very, very hidden.
All right, well, hold on. Devil's advocate. Trump is unusually brash, right?
Okay.
So he was a newsmaker who was going to make news every week, no matter what, one way or another.
Okay.
For better and worse. Sometimes good, sometimes not so great, but sometimes beneficial to him, sometimes not so beneficial to him. But he was always putting his foot in it, whether you wanted him to or not.
Okay. So you're
there
saying
there are
that
probably historical presidents who are also very quiet.
Well, I would.
And that is not necessarily like good or bad. It is just in their nature, right? Like, so I happen to like Calvin Coolidge a whole lot, but I don't think he was particularly. He did not make himself the center of media attention.
Okay, understandable, but I'm going to go against you on this one. And reason being that if you look at the previous three presidents, before, excuse me, what you had, actually, yeah, three presidents,
Okay,
four presidents,
three presidents,
three or four
all
presidents.
boomers, all raised in the television era.
Okay, but all of them had made public addresses within, a month and a half to a month, not even in some cases, of them becoming president. By mid-February, every single one of them had made a public address. How now, in the middle of a pandemic, which I would call a travesty for this country and something very important, much more so than anything those previous three presidents were involved in, should he not be more vocal? Did he not say he would be there for the American people and be visible and walk us through this?
Oh, that's cute. You try to hold them to their promises.
Yeah. How dare I hold my elected officials to the promises? Actually, speaking, look at top stories on the right hand side there, Mr. Cuomo. Ooh, yeah, he's gonna get his cooked here pretty soon, hopefully.
If you believe that, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you.
Yeah, well, I will continue to hold my politicians to their word, even though I know for the most part they will not keep it. I will do my best. So this man needs to. He's not in his basement anymore. He's somewhere, probably in the pantry in the White House. Needs to come out and start saying things and getting involved. Or wait, as you just said, maybe they're hiding him.
Yeah. I don't think he's. I don't think it's in their interest. I don't think it's in his interest to be in the news.
My God, it's so that's just so
infuriating. You've got what you want. Why would you want to stir anything up? Just roll with it.
You mean I have a potato plant that's growing right now in the White House?
I don't mean that you have what you want or that I have what I want. I mean that people with certain policy positions have what they want, and they don't want attention brought to the legislation being moved forward. They just want it shoveled through.
Let's just hide the executive branch completely for the next 4 years.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
Oh, it can't. That's the
Well,
problem.
I,
It
I
can't.
mean, but you say nothing's happening. It's like, well, he's not in public, but at the same time, we're bombing Syria again.
Well, and the thing is, I hope he is not visible while doing things of that nature, because I think there's going to be some buyer's remorse for some of the more middle left leaning individuals who said, I don't like Trump. Let's vote for this guy. Oh, dang. What have I done? So go ahead, have your buyer's remorse. And I will sit here the whole time and be like, oh, yeah, you remember when he promised that? Oh, hey, you remember when he promised that? I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to be like,
Hold on, I don't think people voted for Biden because he promised things. I think people voted for Biden to get anybody aside from Trump.
some did, but some also looked at it like, I will vote for anyone but Trump who's going to do these things they're saying they're going to do. That is not what Trump is doing. I'll give you an example. Just 2 days ago, in the place where we work, some of the people I were talking to, some of our clientele, were specifically saying, yeah, he told me, he said to me, not directly, obviously, to us, the voters, that he was going to stop people being deported. He was going to stop these things. Why is he still doing it?
Youth is wasted on the young.
Indeed, it
To
is.
experience the shock and horror of a president not doing what he said on the campaign trail for the very first time.
Oh, and
That is a
obviously,
young clientele.
right. And I had to be neutral and explain that, there are reports that he is doing this, but maybe things will change. Perhaps they will. He has 4 years. You have to give it time. Keep an eye out, and be careful not just to look at one news report and assume that that is the entire policy of a president. That's me literally defending him. But I would say that about any president.
Right.
But, you know, I also have my personal opinions, but I keep them out of our clientele's mindset because that's not just my job. That's just being a professional.
All right, so let's just get into. By the way, this is National Review. It's a conservative right leaning rag. It's hard for me to say it's right wing because they really don't truck with I guess the more reactionary right or the more populist right. This
Mm-hmm.
is a very stodgy old institution, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So what do they say?
Well, I'll just go right from here. In January, President Biden presented his $1.9 trillion spending package, an emergency measure to address a continuing public health crisis, COVID. Now, as the bill heads to a vote in the House, more than 65 million Americans have been vaccinated, with new cases of COVID 19 on a steady decline. In the meantime, consumer spending and business investment have jumped, while jobless claims have decreased. For a party ostensibly committed to, quote, following the science, the Democrats are surprisingly willing to ignore the data and act as if it is still March of 2020. Yet, even if the economic outlook were as negative as the Democrats claim, Biden's proposal would do little to improve it. More than one-third of the so-called stimulus won't be spent until 2022 or later. Public education grants are expected to last until 2028, and even as teachers' unions refuse to reopen schools, that's partially because $113 billion in educational aid from the last bill remains unspent.
All right, understandable. So this is typical sort of let's create a massive discretionary spending pool and then use it down the road on our policy priorities.
Mhm. Now, and I'll, something I would have been reading and obviously going after a multitude of sources prior to picking this article, and obviously this piece I'm about to say came from Fox Business, so obviously take that with a grain of salt for the right. They're claiming that 20% of the stimulus bill actually goes after COVID right now. 20% of it.
Right, and they've been accused of being disingenuous about that.
Yes, of course.
So
But
normal accusations are flying.
mhm,
The truth is, there is a fundamental disagreement about what spending related what spending is legitimately related to COVID and what spending is not. Right?
right, and
Of course,
Mhm.
whatever your policy priorities are, you're going to try to put that under the COVID umbrella if you can get away with it.
Right, because then obviously whatever you're trying to put in is going to sit pretty and get passed. And I'm sure there are plenty of Democrats and even some Republicans who are getting things passed in this that they may want.
So this
Although,
is fundamentally a dispute over framing of the story,
correct.
right? Which is
Hmm.
also typical, and it makes it very hard to see what's actually happening.
Right. All right, so we'll keep moving on here. And we do, from what I sent you in chat, we'll have to look at that in a minute. And that was the original bill, some of the money that's going to certain places, but we'll talk about that in a moment. All right. So, two, with the $370 billion in state and local assistance, the lion's share of which would sit unused until 2023. With some expectations, state and local budgets are in good shape. The Committee for a Responsible Budget finds that the state and local tax receipts grew by 10% in 2020. What the Democrats' position as emergency relief is, in fact, a bailout of profligate public pension plans in mismanaged blue states. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, well, okay, so I do agree with that, but again, this is going to be one of those things where um, the the proponents of these what I would call bailouts will say, well, these states pay more in federal taxes than they receive in benefits. I think that's a
And
fundamentally wrong way of looking at things, but that's
that's
what
how
they will
they're going
say.
to frame it.
Yeah,
Right. Well, I mean, if that's the case, then what is the governor of Florida's name? Not DeSantis, or is it
it is
DeSantis?
DeSantis.
Okay, so he actually, it's funny because 3 4 days ago he came out and was saying, "Oh, why are you giving more than the fair share of money to states like New York and California when my state, if we're looking at the amount of income that is given via taxes, is only getting half, not even in
Why
some."
are we squabbling? So it seems so strange to me that anybody's talking about what they get back from the federal government when, in my mind, the federal government's only purpose is to destroy that money and use it to defend the greater interests, right?
Right.
So, like, I don't understand this idea that, like, oh, you send money out to D.C. and then you get it back and then you distribute it. Like, the idea that that should somehow be equitable in any way is obscene.
Right, but he was targeting the concept that the Democrats were specifically saying, "Oh,
Right.
we're going to make sure
So
that everyone gets the fair share to stop COVID, to do
this is what
vaccines."
upsets me. It's like, okay, great, congratulations, DeSantis, check mark. You got to call them hypocrites, but you are arguing on their table tennis court.
Right.
Why are we even framing things this way?
Well, because as a politician, you still need to get some of that money probably to do something in your state, and this is what I know. This is what you dislike, and to some degree, I agree with you. But you have to call them out on it. You have to say what you're doing is unfair and wrong as a politician, and
Yeah,
that
but
is the drift. That's a political drift to the left to some degree. I mean, it
any
is.
kind of bailout in this regard is unfair and wrong to begin with. That's where I'm
I
at.
I know. I know. See, and for me, I'm a
Where
little
are
bit
my fighter
more.
jets? And why have we
And
not purchased the correct numbers of them?
and well, I was just going to bring up the Ron Swanson table of great, or is it
Yeah.
Pyramid of
Yeah,
Greatness,
yeah.
and the one that we specifically made for you. I don't know if you want to share.
Yeah,
Yeah,
walls and
what,
fighter jets.
walls, fighter
Everything
jets, and
else is
aircraft
complete
carriers.
waste.
Aircraft carriers.
Right.
So I'm watching Parks and Rec right now. I can't help it. So I understand your position, and obviously, in a lot of things, I'm even a little bit more left of you. And in this instance, you're by playing the game, you support the thing that they do
You
in everything.
propagate the game. You kick the
Right,
ball down the road. You advance their cultural aims.
right. And you make it a norm, the idea to continue doing it because you're accepting it whatsoever.
Yes.
Right. And the realist in me is going to say, yeah, you're right, but what do you do about that? You have
Well,
to,
apparently you roll over every time they want to move the cultural goalpost in the name
and
of pragmatic accomplishment.
And that's the thing, though, is that if you are, I mean,
It's so short-sighted in my mind.
yeah, there are no more real, true, small government Republicans. There's very few left. Very, very, very few, because those are the people that are willing to be like George Washington, in a sense, like, you mean you want me to be president for life? Yeah, no, I don't want that. I think there should be terms. Very few people
Right.
are like
Okay. So anyway,
that.
you know,
That's a disgusting thought.
hypocrisy.
Anyway, right. Moving on. The money that will be spent this year on checks to households and unemployment top ups is wasteful at best and contradictory at worst. Thanks to last year's CARES Act, personal incomes are higher now than they were before the pandemic. Most Americans use the first round of checks to pad out their savings accounts and pay down debt. The second round,
Sensible.
yes, yeah, or some of them probably threw money
So
into.
somebody didn't think that was stimulating enough.
Right.
They
Some of them
were
probably
they were
threw it in.
hoping that it would fuel more liquidity.
Right. There was actually, not to go off topic for a second, but there was some of the people when the whole GameStop thing went in who was angry that the government was giving money out to people, so that retail investors were pushing GameStop up. Stop giving money to citizens to do that. I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry, it's money, right? Right. So, um, what is it? You get to decide what to do with money,
I can't help. It's
right?
just too funny.
This is my
Right.
problem with healthcare. Like, I want to be allowed to buy a million Twinkies when I'm 100 years old with the money that I didn't spend on insurance that I didn't use, and
I
then
mean,
eat myself into destruction. Like,
well,
why should I not be allowed to spend that on Twinkies instead of, I don't know, like health food or something? Like,
didn't they bring?
it's like when you have carve outs for specific things, you're allowed to spend the money on this. We think you need money for that. It's
Right.
like, well then, you don't have the choice to spend the money as you think best, and to take risks and make good and bad decisions. And uh, so when everybody's when everybody's doing exactly the same thing,
Hmm.
how could there possibly be any innovation?
Hmm. Didn't they bring Twinkies back?
Oh, I don't know. Do they go under or something? But my point is, I should be allowed to not buy health insurance. And then, if I get lucky and the money that I've been saving under my mattress for the purpose of medical emergencies, like a broken leg or something, ends up not being needed until I'm a ripe old age, I should just be able to go out in a hedonistic bacchanal of
You know,
completely wasteful spending if I want.
I was thinking more of the Ron Swanson who buries gold all over the town of Pawnee. I was thinking maybe you could just bury all of those Twinkies and maybe they would go up in value if
Right,
Twinkies every
or whatever. What did I see? It was real funny. It was like, I'm retired Special Forces. Um, some of the shops in this town have claymores. If you plan to rob them, good luck, have fun.
I really I should get a Claymore mock up and just point it at my door. That man, I love that man.
It's just that sign.
Well, that and the
Like, none of the shops
right.
have to have claymores. It's just like, you want to be the thief who finds out.
Oh, I love when he gives the claymore to that little girl when she comes into the place to talk about. Oh, I need to do a report on government, and he's like, let me tell you about government. My wife was like, oh no. I'm like, oh yes, yes. We got to keep going. I'm sorry.
All right, proceed.
The last sentence there. The second round of the stimulus, which they were talking about, oh, I said the bad word, delivered in December, contributed to the highest bump in retail spending since 2009. And yeah, that is true. I can't tell you the number of lines I saw, like outside, like TJ Maxx and Burlington Coat Factory.
I'm angry about the price of graphics cards.
And actually, was it in this article they bring that up? It might be in this article that gets brought up. I read another article.
Certainly, the price of or just look at the shortage of kids who want a PlayStation or an Xbox. They still can't get them.
Right.
But it's like, because there's a surplus. So it's like, when you have money that you have earned and you go to spend it, you are careful in spending it. When you get money piled on you for doing nothing, you are not going to be judicious in its use, and you're going to buy things that you don't necessarily care about or you don't necessarily need that much.
Hmm.
and therefore there will be a supply shortage and or price hikes.
Hmm.
And that's entirely predictable. So how anybody thinks that that is, an economic benefit, uh, even Keynes, who said, in the long run we're all dead. We should only play for the short term
Hmm.
because he's a jerk who doesn't care about his grandkids. Um, Even he would look at this and say, yeah, that's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Like I'm not going to be dead by the time that the piper comes to for that bill.
Right. I mean, we've been my family. We've been sitting on our money. Obviously, we're getting these stimulus checks, and we're sitting on it and preparing to use it where we need to. To pay down
Watching the
debt.
value of it go down.
Well, I mean, we're sitting on some of it, but it's funny
If
because
you
I told my wife
immediately
the same
bought gold
thing.
with it, you'd be making back.
Right, but I invested. I invested with
Right.
some of these big lows when the stock market crashed because of COVID, and I'm making dividends hand over fist. Maybe in the long run that'll help. We'll see. All right,
All right.
at the
Deficit.
top there. Yep, a deficit-funded subsidy to consumers might be a boon to economic growth if Americans went back to work. But the Biden administration is committed to making unemployment as attractive as possible. The proposed $400 unemployment top-ups, which it officially is $400 now, by the way, that's what it got
Yeah.
passed in the Senate. Uh,
Okay. So it's wait a minute. Four
they
hundred.
were they were 300, and I'm 99.9%
Well,
sure they
there were
went up to
$600
400.
checks in January.
Correct. They are now
Okay.
400.
Those. Wait, they got reduced.
No, they originally start at 300.
No,
Okay, they
no, no.
start at
600.
300.
There were
No,
$600 checks, and then we were talking about 1,400 or 2,000.
right.
So
They
the Trump
were
checks were 600.
correct. It was plus 300. You get 300 a week. Then it was
What?
plus another
Oh,
300.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I didn't realize what we were talking about. This is
yeah,
the
yeah.
unemployment where you're
Correct,
being paid extra not
correct.
to work.
Right. So during when Trump did it, it was 300 plus 300.
Oh, okay. I still thought we were talking about the actual direct checks.
Oh no,
This is
they're
the unemployment thing, which is a whole other debacle.
right. They're adding another $100, so it'll be $400 instead of three hundred
Okay.
dollars a week. But the only thing they did in those terms is that they lowered the originally with the CARES Act, it was every American got $1,400, $1,200 checks, depending on which one you're talking about. Now everyone's going to get $1,400, but
Right,
you have
which tops off the original 600
right.
from January to make it 2,000. Except some will claim you promised 2,000 because they weren't counting that 600, and so forth.
Forgive me. I still say if you say 2,000, 2,000 means 2,000.
But what you were arguing about at the time was
I'm
whether or not that bill should be 600 or 2,000.
right, but a lie is a lie is a lie.
What? Okay,
I know. I,
semantical.
I,
Um,
I
okay.
don't know. When I look someone in the eye and say I'd make a promise, I make a promise regardless of what the amount is, even though the other half of me dislikes the fact that it's that much money to begin with, or any amount of money
Well,
to begin with.
I'm just saying that the context of the original promise makes sense. Has to be taken into account. The context was whether it would be a $600 check or a $2,000 check, not whether a $600 check would be sent followed by a $2,000 check,
He said
which
two
would
thousand
be
dollar
an
checks.
argument between 600 and 2,600.
He was.
He said $2,000. He said the
he
words
said.
$2,000 checks because
He
again,
said.
and look, I don't like defending Biden, but what he said was what he was saying was a $2,000 check instead of the $600 check. He never wanted the $600 checks to go out because the context of the original argument was that those should be $2,000 checks.
Well, then the context of when he was in Georgia helping the two senators there to get elected, he said, if you elect these two guys next week, $2,000 checks will go out. What does that mean?
Right. Well, yeah, okay. I'm not saying politicians are not liars, or that he didn't continue to spin that into something else. But
I know.
initially, That's what was
I
being
know.
discussed.
Rawr, 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 rawr.
I don't really
Uh,
care, right? Like I just like you, I'm taking this money, I'm dumping it in the bank, I'm paying off some debts with it, and I think that it's going to hurt me in the long run. So every time I receive one of these checks, I get a little like ugly feeling in my gut about what I'm
hmm
going to have to pay down the road, and it's going to exceed the number on that check. I don't look at that thing like I won the lottery. I look at that thing like, oh, awesome. The prices of everything is going to go up more
Right.
for the rest of
Yeah.
my life.
The inflation is going to
Yeah.
be. I'm so scared.
I'm
So
going to pay
scared
it 10
about.
times over.
All right, we got to keep moving here. I'm holding up the line now. All right. So I think it's the proposed $400 unemployment top ups extended until September would leave 60% of the benefit recipients making more off the job than on the
Right.
job.
So we're paying people not to work.
hmm
Great.
Not to mention Biden's proposed federal minimum wage of $15, which would kill 1.4 million jobs, according to the Congressional Budget Office. Now
Yeah.
that got
Time to
nixed.
fire the teenagers.
Right,
They're
that got
not worth
nixed.
$15 an hour yet. They haven't earned
Nope.
those skills.
Well, that got nixed off. $15 an hour got nixed. That's gone.
Okay.
They got rid of that.
Because
To
they're gonna do that through the states instead, I guess.
right, right. As and if you're not paying attention, go look at again. We can look at our locality. We looked at New Jersey and Pennsylvania. Both governors are pushing bills to make $15 minimum wage, but they did that February 6th, 7th, and 8th. They
Mm-hmm.
were doing that, which means they knew this wouldn't pass, and it was part of the game plan all along.
Right. Okay. So it's typical.
Disgusting.
All right.
Moving on.
I'll,
Well, no,
I'll read
go
the
ahead.
last three paragraphs because you're probably getting out of breath. So, recent shortages of everything from lumber to computer chips. Yeah, there you go, computer chips. You're right.
Yep.
Show that supply remains a bigger issue than demand. It's almost as though supply side economics, which is what this is called, which never made sense to call it that. But anyway, it's almost as though basic economics, as described by Thomas Sowell, or capitalism, in other words, as described by Adam Smith, is how the economy actually works. No amount of consumer spending can stimulate an economy in which businesses are unable to produce the desired goods and services. And but it's worse than that. It's actually that it places an undue strain on these goods and services because people who would otherwise not be purchasing them or have money burning a hole in their pocket, so they start increasing demand where they
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates an artificial bubble in the economy. Suddenly, supply ramps up to meet the newfound demand, but the newfound demand is not permanent since it was money printed and sent out to people, and there will
Mm-hmm.
also be a hangover on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Not only does Biden bill support these or ignore these issues, but it exacerbates them by incentivizing the unemployed to stay home. Elsewhere, the bill's expanded Obamacare subsidies, a backdoor attempt to improve some of the many disappointing results of Obamacare, would raise prices for most Americans and increase the already astronomical sums of money spent on health care in the U.S. As with most of Biden's proposal, it does not belong in an emergency relief bill. There's no emergency. When did COVID arrive?
Too
Did
freaking
COVID
long
arrive
ago.
last week?
Oh my god,
Yesterday? 2 weeks
so
ago?
ridiculous.
I'm sorry, it's a year old. What does the word emergency mean? This is my problem. I can't even discuss things with people anymore because we have fundamental ontological disagreements about the meanings of words. Emergency means something new is emerging.
Mm.
I'm sorry. COVID is not emergent. It is a known quantity.
Listen, there are, and I'm not. I'm on your side on this one completely. These people who we are talking to, and some of them are our colleagues and people who we run into, family, even my own family, I have discussions with. Um, and they say, yeah, this is an emergency. I mean, yes,
If you say it
but
enough, it becomes true.
but I mean, what were the citizens in our country doing during the entirety of World War II? I'm sure it felt like an emergency after Pearl Harbor was bombed for a number of months. But you're telling me over the course of all of those years,
Well,
was
I mean, to be fair to World War II, there were new and emergent developments throughout, right? New operations, new
right?
threats.
Right, but what
New
I'm referring
technology is
to,
being developed by the enemy.
yeah, but
So COVID has not significantly changed over the course of the last year, not in terms of
right,
the way we have of dealing with it.
right. My point is that people buckled down, they tightened their big boy and big girl pants on, and they got tough about it, and they knew what they had to do, and they prepared,
Sure.
and they got ready. Listen, COVID sucks. People have passed away. It is horrible. But there is some reality that we have to understand that this is not a world ending virus. The vast majority of people are going to live. The death toll is probably somewhere in the vicinity of 0.5%. And but what's going to happen is people are going to say, oh, there's all these variants. More people are going to die. Yeah. Have you looked at the flu numbers lately? Have you looked at the flu numbers for the last half year?
You're going to get us kicked off YouTube.
Up to Did they
You're not allowed
find
to
us?
say that.
Oh my God. How many viewers do we have? Is it like
Yeah. You're right. We're small enough.
we're gonna slip through the cracks. Maybe 10 years from now to be like, oh, look at them. They were disbelievers.
They were comparing COVID to the flu.
My God. But
Misinformation.
I'm gonna put my wallet right here on the table, right in front of me right now. And what I'm gonna say is that this will become the flu C. This will be the flu number 3. This will be flu A, B, C. This will be flu C. And we will continue to get shots for it every year. I bet you.
Anyway, the pandemic is not yet over, and the economy remains fragile. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Legislation that accelerated vaccinations and postponed businesses to reopen as quickly as possible would be welcome. The Biden stimulus is nothing like that. So I have to agree with National Review here. It's not.
Yes.
They are making very outrageous claims. All right.
No.
Unfortunately, I'm low for time, so I've got to let you get the last word in.
Well, I mean, should we make predictions? Actually, I did. I
I'm
mean, we
not.
haven't
I'm
done
not
that.
prepared to do predictions today, but we will make new predictions next week.
Okay. I mean, this has dominated the last, I would say, 3 news cycles, 2 or 3 news cycles, which are about a week, or actually, what would you call a news cycle? 3 days to a week?
So this is the 5th or 6th COVID spendulus, right?
This is the third?
No, they spent
Third.
12 trillion last year. This is only 1.9.
No. I'm trying to think if you're referring to
Like from the
actual
beginning. So
bills.
so so there was a COVID expenditure right in the beginning in like April of last year, and
Mm-hmm.
then there was another one in June, and then there was another one in August, and then there was another one right after the election.
Your average U.S. citizen only sees it as each bill is the one when I get a check mailed to me.
Oh, we're only counting those ones.
Oh, I guarantee that's
Not
what
the
your average
enormous,
citizen is.
but we're talking about trillions of dollars of expenditures, of bailouts for this, and
Oh, I completely agree with you. But your
masks
average
for that, and
American,
whatever.
but does your average American see that?
I'm just saying this is like the 5th or 6th
Yeah,
trillions of
you're.
dollars COVID expenditure. So
Yep,
what I'm
I
saying
agree.
is this sucked up 3 news cycles. Why? It's no different from any of the other horrendous ones, really.
Probably because it's Biden's first big
Oh,
thing.
something arrived on his desk that he gets to sign.
It's
Okay.
you mean like the how many executive orders on the first
Yeah.
day?
Okay, so it's the first thing he gets to do that's not an executive order, I guess. But it's
Look what
just
I
like
did.
for me, it's like all the pork in there is just like par for the course. It's gotten to the point where a budget hawk though I am, I'm desensitized to the amount of spending that goes on, and I can't even tell one pork bill from the next anymore.
Right. And this is again going back to the comment you said, and it's something that I've been secretly also thinking about too. I'm sickened because I know this is going to come back to bite us, and I can't even fathom when we will get out of the inflation that this is going to create. I can't even think about it. It absolutely sickens me.
Well, and then they're going to act surprised, as though it's a new emergency when that happens, right? When the inflation starts really spiraling out of control. Because right now it seems to be mostly tamped down and is merely a reaction to the immediate. But when it goes, they'll be like, oh, who could have foreseen this? Best, I don't know, create new government powers, regulate this or that, spend money on this or that. So
What
this is the only way they know how to do anything is to
what
spend
are
money in
economics?
reaction.
How do economics work? I don't understand.
They don't.
No, they don't. They clearly do not, and they also probably don't care about the results because they all have the money they need to keep their little house, or excuse me, houses
Yeah.
perfectly fine.
Well, this is the Robert Conquest Code, right? Assume
Hmm.
every government agency is run by a cabal of its enemies, and then everything will make sense. So,
Well,
move
I
on
mean,
to
this
our
is
quote and call it a day.
yeah, yeah.
All right.
There you go. Yeah, where are we at?
We have reached number 12.
Okay,
So we're almost halfway through these, and we can move on to something else, some other cultural thing when we get through them.
indeed.
Epictetus says, "If you would improve, lay aside such reasonings as these. If I neglect my affairs, I shall not have a maintenance. That is to say, I won't have a retirement plan. If
Hmm.
I do not punish my servant, he will be good for nothing. For it were better to die of hunger, exempt from grief and fear, than to live in affluence with perturbation. It is better that your servant should be bad, that you should be unhappy." So essentially, that uh, you're sweating the small things, and placing your happiness on the behavior of somebody else uh, does you no good.
Hmm.
Begin therefore with little things. Is a little oil spilled, or a little wine stolen? Say to yourself, "This is the price for peace and tranquility," and nothing is to be had for nothing. And when you call your servant, consider that it is possible that he may not arrive immediately at your call, or, if he does, that he may not do as you wish. But it is not at all desirable for him, and very undesirable for you, that it should be in his power to cause you any disturbance.
And this goes immediately back to being resilient.
Yep.
You have to be resilient. There are going to be rocks in the pathway. There's going to be bumps. The wheels on your car are going to break when you're trying to go from point A to point B or whatever your goals are, and you have to be ready. And here we are. COVID is a horrible thing that our generations are going to have to deal with, but it is something that we have dealt with to some degree. We're
Hey, look,
here,
look on the bright side. It's nothing next to the inflation we're going to deal with.
and we're going to have to prepare for that.
Yeah.
But we can still vote some of these bastards out. That's that's where I'm gonna.
Yeah, you can take it all stride, take it all in context. All right, I think we should adjourn.
I agree.
I am the
Uh,
cabinet.
I'm the department chair. I have the Altoids box because we don't have our
Gavel.
dear friend the gavel.
Well, there we
All
go.
right.
Meeting adjourned.